Hi there and welcome to this video. In this video, I want to test Docker with nftables. If you come to this page, you'll see that Docker version 29 is coming with nftable support experimentally. So let me test this for the first time. I haven't used it. Let's just see how it's going to go. So since this is still in testing mode, I'm going to start from scratch by installing Docker, and then we'll just do anything else that is recommended here to get nftables working with Docker. So the first thing is I will need to install Docker. I will be using Ubuntu, so I'll just use this. And I want to do this on a VPS just to see how it's going to work on a VPS situation, especially if I connect a domain to my Docker. So let's get started. This might not be a very short video. This video is not going to be that short, but I'll also make sure it's not too long. So let's get started. So I'm going to deploy a small VPS on Vultr. If you want to use Vultr, you can do so. You can get $300 of free credit from Vultr if you're new to the platform. You can use any provider you want to use. I really don't care. You can also use VirtualBox. You can use your local computer if you want to follow along. I really don't care. The reason I'm using this is because I want a public environment where I'll be able to connect my DNS to a domain and see how it goes with Docker with nftables. And I have multiple videos of how to deploy a server on Vultr, so I'm not going to cover that in this one. So I'm going to pause the recording momentarily. There we go. The server is ready. So I'm going to copy my IP, open terminal. If you're following along on Windows, just download and install Git and then open Git Bash. So I'm going to do SSH. The user is root. Let me get my password from there, and then I'll come back. Type yes to confirm. Enter. Paste your password. Enter. Now there are certain aliases I usually use. So instead of doing things like sudo apt update, systemctl, status, systemctl, stop, I can just do things like zip, seed, all these aliases. Let me add them to my new server. Enter, Control L, and I can do UU that will update the server. So you can do sudo apt update, sudo apt upgrade -y, but I'd rather use the aliases. So there we go. The server is updated. The next thing, let's install Docker. So I'm going to come back here and I will add the link to everything I'm using in the description below. So first things first, I want to remove all these firewalls because, as I said, we are going to use Docker with nftables. So let me copy all of that. Control-Shift-V. So UFW will be removed. I don't know about iptables. I think it still needs iptables installed. I'm not sure about that, but let's just test it by removing iptables as well. I don't know whether it's installed. Let's just type iptables and remove that one as well. In case we experience a problem, we're going to install it. But usually you'll find that Docker will install it if it needs it. So let's come back. Let's come back here. Continue with the adding repository. So the one thing you need to be sure, one thing you should know is that we are going to install the test version. Here you can see the repository is stable. So the first thing I can do is I can copy this and let me put it in VS Code. And I want to edit. And I want to edit this from stable to test because the Docker version 29 is still in test mode. So if we were to install stable, we won't get the latest version, which is version 29, which is currently in test mode in beta mode. So I'm just going to Control Shift V, everything, enter. Okay, you can see that I removed iptables, but Docker is installing it. So that means it still requires it. Right? You can see all these are related to iptables. The next thing I want to do is I want to enable nftables. So if you need these aliases, let me know. I can just copy that and add it for you if you need it. Control L to clear the screen. The first thing I want to confirm is if Docker is installed well. So let's come here, and I want to run Docker hello world. Control Shift V, enter. Okay, so that is running. So usually when you're running Docker, you want to use a different user. Okay, so this is where this comes in. If you have another user, you'd add that user to the Docker group, but I'm not going to go into that. Maybe you know how to do that, maybe you don't, but just make sure you're running your Docker. At least you're running Docker as a different user, not the root user. In this case, I'm just doing this as an example, so I will use the root user. So that means I'm not going to add my current user to the Docker group. So now that we have installed Docker, that's the last of that. We don't need that anymore. Let's come back to the Docker documentation with Docker nftables. So here, if you want to enable Docker with nftables, to use Docker with nftables instead of with iptables, you use Docker engine option. That when you're starting Docker, or you can add this in the daemon.json file. So let's come here, copy, you add that. So let me copy that, and that's how I want to do it. I will just add it in the daemon configuration file. So the daemon is found under etc vi. Let's edit with vim. I don't know if I have vim installed. Let me just do apt install vim. Okay, it's already there. So I'm going to do vi /etc/docker tab to autocomplete. And is it there already? No, it's not there. You have to create it. daemon.json, enter. And we need to add the configuration. So I'll add two curly brackets, go into insert mode, press I to go into insert mode, and then enter the curly brackets. And within the curly brackets, let's paste in what we've copied from Docker. Escape, Shift ZZ to save, and we can restart Docker. Before I restart Docker, look at iptables. iptables-l. You can see we have UFW stuff, and we have Docker stuff. Okay, so before we restart Docker, let's go and let's look at the status of nftables. So this is just systemctl status nftables. Okay, so it seems like it's not even installed. So I'm going to do apt install nftables, or rather, my mistake. This is sys to look at the status. Sys nftables. So it's active, but it's disabled. But this means that it is running. Okay, it is running because I ran sit. Sit simply means to start it up. Systemctl restart nftables. So that's going to start it. So that's why it's already running, because I ran that fast. But if you haven't run something like systemctl start or restart, you'll see that it is dead. But in this case, it's running. So we can enable it for starting anyway. So systemctl, let me just type the full thing, systemctl enable --now nftables. So what this is doing is that it's going to enable nftables to start up whenever you reboot the system, and it's also going to start it now if it is not already running. Enter. There you go. So now if you were to do systemctl status, you'll see that it's enabled and running. So now that that is done, the next step would be to restart Docker. And when you restart Docker, you might face a problem, but let's just see. If we face any problem, we're going to solve it. So let's start Docker. So I'll do sudo, that's systemctl restart Docker. All right, so it started without a problem. Let's look at the status. All right, so the fact that it is active and running means that everything is perfect. Let's check our iptables again. Iptables -l, and now you can see that it's like everything has been moved to nftables. So if you were to do nft, let's look at the current rules for nftables. nft list rule set, enter, and now you can see all the Docker stuff are now under nft. All the Docker stuff are now listed under nftables. Okay, and if you look up there for iptables, you can see everything's policies accept, but the guy with the last resort is nftables. So the next step, let's run kadi or Nginx to see if we can access it from outside of, we can access it publicly. So let's go and run docker, run it as a daemon, and port, let's say, let's use port 3000. That will be the port on to the world, and this will be the port on Docker 80. And let's run kadi. Let me use kadi alpine. Right, so that's up and running. So let's go to this and see if we can access it. I'll copy my IP, come back here, paste, and if you access it, you can see there's nothing there. All right, let us go to port 3000, enter. So port 3000, okay, so port 3000 is accessible, and if you want to make sure that, if you want to make it so that it's not accessible, you can see this is something that happens by default on Docker. Let's look at our rules again. Control L, nft list rule set nft, Control A, enter. Let's look at this. Somewhere our firewall is allowing that port, and that should not be happening. Somewhere that is being allowed, but don't worry, we're going to fix that in a moment. So you don't want a situation where Docker can just allow things from your firewall like this. So what you're going to do is you can add your own rule here. Let's go to vi/etc, and we want to go to nftables configuration, enter, and you can see inside here we need to remove all this. Okay, so this is probably allowing Docker to just send traffic outside of the network, and we don't want that. So what you can do, let's go and search for default configuration, because we should not be able to access this just like that. Okay, so let's go and search for nftables examples. We'll just get something from the wiki, from the default nftables wiki. Go to examples and rule set for a server. I'm going to copy the entire thing. Copy. And I'll do 100 DD to delete everything from there. Control Shift V. So basically, this is going to allow these ports. Okay. For this one as well, I want to separate these ports. When you separate them, it makes it easier for you to block, drop, or reject a port. So I'm just going to do YYP to copy the line, and I want to put 80. I want to put port 80 on its own, and as well I want to delete it from there. So escape, Shift ZZ to save, and then we can restart nftables. So after doing that, after blocking all these ports that we don't allow, so even if Docker allows it, since it is not in our configuration there, if you want to allow a port, you just go and edit there and add it. If we come back here, I'm sure now we won't be able to access this as easily. So let's just copy that, and let's even open it in a new browser, in a new private window. You can already see after refreshing the page, it just didn't come up. Now it's not. You can see now it's not accessible. So that's something that's one way of making it easier for you. And I think with nftables, it would be so much easier to protect your ports. So that's a good thing there. We can't access it. So if I wanted to access it through that port, I would have to edit. Let me add the port vi/etc nftables. So say I want to add the port, I can add it here. Let me just add it as a brand new port. So I'll just do YYP to paste that, and I want to add port 3003. Go into press I to go into insert mode. So I will allow the port 3K, escape, Shift ZZ to save, and then I will restart nftables, sit nftables, or rather, let me reload instead of restarting. Nftables. And now if we come back and reload this, okay, so I'm just running this again. I stopped it. Let's come back and reload. Just continue to site. You'll see that it's not accessible because the port is not allowed on our firewall. So let's make that port accessible on the firewall and see if that will make it accessible. etc nftables conf, and then let's copy this rule YYP, and then I want to change 80. I want to change 80 to 3000. So press I to go into insert mode. delete 3 1 2 3, escape, shift ZZ, and then you need to restart. You need to restart nftables or reload nftables, and you also need to reload Docker, or rather restart Docker, because if you don't restart Docker, the firewall rules for Docker will be lost. So nft list rule set, right? So once you see that, well and good. If you don't restart Docker, you're going to lose all these Docker firewall rules. Okay, so every time you restart nftables, you have to restart Docker. So when you restart Docker, the container you're running will also disappear, so you can run it again. That's why you use better ways of running containers like Docker Compose, so that you can automatically restart it once Docker restarts. So I'm going to run that again. And now if you come back here, let's see if you can access it. And you can see the moment I restart Docker, this one automatically reloaded and that port is now accessible. All right, paste and go. Now it's accessible. If we delete the port, and you should delete the port, let's comment this out. I escape, shift ZZ, and then we're going to reload nftables. And note that I've reloaded nftables. So if I was to check the rules again, nft list rule set, you'll see that we have lost the Docker rules. So you need to restart Docker, seed Docker, or rather restart Docker, not reload. You need to restart Docker, systemctl restart Docker. And even with that, it's still not going to be accessible because we have not allowed that port through the firewall. Usually the best way to do this is to use a reverse proxy. So let's use Nginx to access this, and let's just use this domain as an example. Doesn't have an A record, so let me add the IP from Vultr, add it there as our A record name, paste, or rather at to symbolize that IP, and then I'll just leave it proxied and save. And you know what, I can also add the IPv6. Oh, I didn't check IPv6. Okay, you should always check IPv6. It's like having two IPs on the same server. So that's something I should have done. It doesn't matter. If you had it, you just add a quad A record. Quad A record, that one, with your IPv6 there and the domain there. All right, so let's assume that's it. So if somebody was to go there, go to that, let's see, the web server is down. This means that it has been connected. The DNS is correctly showing. So let's go back to our server, and we want to install Nginx. And I will come back here, go to blog. I want to install Nginx mainline, the latest version of Nginx. So I'm on Ubuntu. Let me go with that. Come back to my server, Control L, Control Shift V, enter, enter. There we go. Nginx 129 is there. If you were to go to the main IP now, at least Nginx should be accessible. 216 there. All right, so maybe Nginx is not running. Let's check sys Nginx. Okay, Nginx is not running. Let's restart it. Let's start it. Sit Nginx. That is systemctl start Nginx. Now if we go reload that, All right, now Nginx is running on the server and we can use it to proxy all our Docker containers. Let me just generate a reverse proxy configuration file from ChatGPT. I don't want to go through my files. I know I have one that I can use, but I don't want to go through the process of searching, while I can simply generate one from ChatGPT. So let me open that. ChatGPT generate an Nginx proxy config to localhost port, maybe port 3000. You can use whichever port you want. Let's see what it's going to give me. Server name, your domain location. There we go. Okay, that seems right. There we go. That's right. That's what I need. So let me go back to my server. I'll copy that, and let me create a configuration file for that reverse proxy, for that domain. So vi/etc nginx tab to autocomplete conf.d, and we need to create a new file here. Control-Shift-V agolmi.com, and then make sure you add .conf at the end. .conf, enter, and then we can add our ChatGPT configurations. Let's come here. I'll copy all of it, come back here, Control-Shift-V. Right, so make sure everything is copied from server to the end. So what I need to change here is my server IP, my server name, agolmi.com. So if somebody goes to agolmi, it should proxy to that port. You can use 127.0.0.1, 127.0.0.1, or localhost. Escape, Shift, ZZ, and do I need to? Okay, let me restart Nginx or even reload. You can test if there's any problem with our configuration. Nginx-T configuration is okay, so we can reload it. Seed Nginx for systemctl reload, or you can also do Nginx -s reload. That's also going to reload the configuration. Or rather Nginx -s, not -e, -s reload. And if you come back here, that one still goes there. So after doing all that, I seems to have messed up something. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to purge Nginx, purge-y Nginx. Right, so let's reinstall Nginx. Apt install, and then let's just restart Nginx, start Nginx, I mean. Let's come here. Okay, now everything is working. Let's go to our configuration and check. So if you had other things running on Nginx, you should have backed them up before deleting Nginx, but I really didn't care for that at the moment because I can redo what I had already done. Conf-d. Okay, so you can see I need to create my file again, agolmi.com.conf. Let's get it one more time. Control-Shift-V, paste it in there, and the only thing I want to change is the domain. So just do Shift-A to go to the end of the line in edit mode. So I'm going to go to agolmi. I'm going to change that to agolmi.com. Escape, Shift, ZZ, and I can restart. or rather, if you want to reload Nginx, just use sit, because I messed up the last time. I used -e, which is for something else. So sit Nginx, enter. So let's come back and check if we can go to agolme.com. So what could be the issue here? Conf is there. Is it because of server cache? Control Shift N. Let us see if localhost port 3K is accessible. Cal localhost that failed to connect. Okay, so is our Docker container running? Docker ps. Okay, the container is not running. That's the issue. So this is why you run your containers using Docker Compose, so that they can automatically start back up if they ever go down. Docker run, well, let me just search for it. I'm not about to type the entire thing. Control U to delete, Control R to search. Let me just search for Caddy, and that's going to bring that command. Control R, search for a command, and you can select the one you want. So let's come back here, reload. How about nft list rule set? So Docker rules are there. We have port 80. Okay, that is accessible. Okay, the issue is HTTPS. Let's do HTTP. It automatically redirects to HTTPS. Let's go back here. We're going to look for SSL overview. Configure. Off. Save. Let's come back. Copy. Paste and go. Nginx is redirecting to the local port. So if you have another app you're running, all you have to do is create another configuration file, give it a different port, and just like that, you'll have your app running. So there you go. You've seen how you're working with Docker and nftables. Docker with nftables. If there's anything that was not clear, just let me know, because at the end there was a bit of stumbling, but that is just because of a few mistakes that I made. But at the end of the day, you've seen now you can use Docker with nftables, and all your ports, all your Docker ports will not be accessible. Just add a rule like I've done, vi/etc tab nftables conf. There you go. You see, if you allow any rule within here, it will be allowed. If you don't allow a port, it will not be allowed. So that's basically it. If you want to allow other things, maybe you want to change your SSH port, add the SSH port here and then go and configure your SSH configuration file. But that is not the point of the video. So the last thing is just to help anyone that doesn't like Ubuntu. I know there are people like me, they don't use Ubuntu. I just use Ubuntu for demonstrations, but I usually don't use it in production. I'd probably use Debian or Alma Linux or something else. For people like that, if you want to find out which file you should edit to add your configuration files, you'd probably find that if you go to Etsy, nftables.conf, it's not there. So what you can do to find out which file you should edit, you can do sys systemctl. So that's sys systemctl starters nftables, or rather sys nftables, since I'm using my alias sys nftables, and go to this file. Look at that file, cut, Ctrl+Shift+C to copy, Ctrl+Shift+V to paste, and inside of that file you're going to see this. This is a file that starts, and this is a file that reloads. So whichever Linux distro you're on, look at the file that is listed here. On Alma Linux and a few RHEL distributions, you're going to see this is inside of Etsy. Is it nftables or nftables.d? I can't remember, but you'll find something there related to NFT. Go into that file, see if you can add your configurations inside there. And that is something that I encountered in one of the videos I did for nftables in cPanel. So if you come to this video, you'll find that that is clearly explained there. cPanel firewall setup with nftables. If you don't find it there, you're going to find it in this one. Anyway, that's it. The point of the video has been made. You don't need to use iptables. You can just enable nftables for Docker. You can see our iptables rules are still like that, but our nftables rules, nft list tables, you'll see that we have our firewall there, Docker tables, Docker IP6 tables. Okay, all the rule set can also be listed to give you an out view of all your rules. So I want to emphasize, when you restart nftables, you have to restart Docker. So make sure your containers can automatically restart when Docker restarts, and that is something you can do in Docker Compose. So there you go. You can use Docker with nftables. And that's it for this video. I hope it helps you to figure out if you want to use nftables or you want to use Docker normally with iptables. That's it for this one. Until next time.